Oh, yeah.
I don't know where they were going from, but they were flying around.
So we move on to item 6 on the agenda, it's Clark's report.
There's
Any
not,
updates
not,
on
a, not a
correspondence?
great deal there. One thing I just speak to Amanda about it actually, when we do the footpaths reports and highways reports, there has been a tendency in the last month, some follow-ups haven't perhaps happened because there hasn't been a proper resolution maybe on what we're actually going to do. So what I've now got is a template now, so every time we have a footpath or a highways issue, I'm going to make a note of it, make a note of the resolution and the action point that we agreed to make. So that when I walk away from this meeting, I know exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Because sometimes I walk away and I'm not actually sure who's taking this up or who's taking that up, which can leave a little bit of a hole there. And then suddenly you get to the next meeting and somebody says, well, I raised that last time. And nothing's happened. So each item now we raise, I should keep this on a file so I can look back and say, well, actually, on the 2nd of October, we agreed to X, Y, Z. So that's something new which I'd like to do. The only other thing I wanted to mention was on the email, on the minutes, agendas. When I send them out, everybody around this table is not a problem, but sometimes I don't get confirmation of the meeting. And if I don't get confirmation of the meeting, then technically that councillor hasn't been advised. And people say to me, well, why can't we just have a sort of an option on the Outlook that says receipt? It's not good enough. You actually have to have from the councillor, thank you, received. We don't want war and peace. Just received is enough. But there's a couple of councillors who virtually never, ever reply. So I never know whether they've actually got them or not.
Is it just for the minutes or for any document?
It's just for the agenda.
Right.
It's for the agenda and the minutes that go out the week before.
Okay.
Because legally we're obliged to notify every council. And whereas in days gone by we used to, and I remember when I first joined the council, I used to go around and post them in everybody's door, physically, in hard copy, and I knew that they'd received them. But now, I'm never quite sure if I sent an email whether they've got it or whether they haven't. But as I say, it doesn't apply to anybody in this room, but there's a couple that don't always
How do
reply.
we remedy that? Is there any comeback for not
No,
replying?
there's nothing we can do apart from just request. That's all. But just make sure that we comply with the rules of meetings.
Because I would say that if you notice at the top of the agenda, it is a council summons, so you're not just notified of the meeting, you're actually, as a councillor, you're summoned to attend the meeting, which is why you're then supposed to acknowledge the fact that you've had that notification, that summons.
I mean, the only things that ever need replying, those things I put in red at the top of the email, so if I put in red, and that doesn't happen very often, there's only about probably two circulations in a month where I actually put that it's required. So on the rest of it, it doesn't really matter whether I get a receipt or not. But on those where I put the red, it's quite useful.
Is it worth putting in red on the agenda, please acknowledge, just as a reminder?
I do that. Yeah. Just a reminder. Yeah. Because sometimes these things just need a little bit of just a reminding, really. Nothing else apart from that.
Okay. So we move on to the working group reports and footpaths team.
There was a couple of things that Colin had mentioned. One of it was the style by Windy Ridge, but we know that there is a gate that has been ordered and is being fitted soon. The other things we are in the process of getting a quote for, I believe.
What I was going to ask actually at the meeting was you remember at the last meeting it was mentioned about the handrail on the footpath. We've gone out for a quotation from the person who did it for us last time. We're waiting to hear back their estimate. What we were going to ask was if the council, we have £1,000 in our budget currently at the moment for footpath maintenance, which we haven't spent anything of this year. Last time I believe the amount we spent was about £700 on doing.
700, yeah.
So what we were going to ask is if it comes in line with what we did last time, are you okay that we get on and do it rather than wait and come back to the next meeting to say we've now had a quote? If it's significantly more than that, we'll come back to the next meeting.
10-15% variance.
Yeah, but if you're happy that we do that, we'll get straight on with that and hopefully get that handrail back in place.
Yeah.
Or can I just ask, just to be clear, that if we're all in favour that we do that, please show.
Right.
So that's clearly, so we can do that and get that underway.
The other thing was the hedge going up the Knoll footpath, and we think that's in hand.
Yes, I mean, there is someone who was who has been speaking to the landowner about going in there with a flail and cutting and knocking the hedge back off the path. Obviously, we've got to make sure that the weather is right, the ground conditions are
It's
okay.
a gradient.
Yes, but that is underway as well, so that should be dealt with once it's fit for us to get up there.
Great for blackberry picking, but
Yeah. And the other thing was those that we discussed before, if you go from opposite Woodlands straight across where there was a big, several residents have complained.
Right in front of all
The
Cotswold.
ones, yes.
Yes.
So I'd call it behind the red cow, that comes out by Westcroft. Were we going to, I know we've put it in the BKN to say, if this is your footpath, please clear it, or would you like to volunteer to clear it? But if that doesn't happen within the next before the next edition comes out, are those landowners going to have a letter or an email
We
to
certainly
say?
can do that. If members are happy that we do that as a friendly approach to say.
So how would you describe the location on this? And you'd say this was cider farm?
I don't think theirs is actually a problem. I think it's Walcott Hill's okay, that's been cleared. It's the next one in, which belongs to
I'm trying to see where it is.
Mr. Nobody.
It's footpath 8/16, and we can.
And then action point is right to
It's,
the
yeah, sorting out who owns which.
And I think
Yeah.
what we would do is if Amanda's happy, we'll go and walk it, see which are the ones that are
Yeah,
dodgy, and then we
we'll
can
see which other
contact
ones
those
that are.
landowners so we don't just do a
didn't
blanket.
get through. Yeah.
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of new residents there as well, I think, so they probably don't know,
Yeah.
or not aware of what they need to do.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, just also to mention on the footpaths report, you remember at the last meeting we agreed that we agreed a quote for the new gate up at the car park and the gate at Brent Corner. Fortunately, we've now been advised by Somerset that they were always going to supply that gate at Brent Corner, but they've now also arranged with one of their contractors that he's going to fit it. So we don't have to pay for that one. We're just doing the one up at the car park. So that's a few £100 less that we won't have to spend. Anything else on footpaths?
Just we were going to, last meeting, request volunteers for car parking key keepers to
Yes.
open this, so just an action to bring up.
So obviously the BKM we put in the thing asking for some volunteers to come forward. We've had somebody come forward who's volunteered to help us with footpaths, and we're hoping we'll get some more coming through as the magazines go out. Once we get I think we've heard from the contractor in terms of the gate. I think he said it was within the next 10 days.
Yeah.
We're looking at for it to be installed.
Yeah.
So in the short term, Amanda, thank you, Amanda. I did have a word earlier.
We're going to deal with it. I'm going to give you early shift.
So Amanda's got the morning shift, I've got the night shift. And then we will work out a rota and look at the volunteers as well as they come through. But once it's physically there, I think it will be easier to get a head around what's going on.
A couple of people came up to me, a lot of people got there for the sunrise, so that's quite an early opening. If we're going to allow people to drive up there and do it, or we stop them from seeing the sunrise from the Knoll. So
Have to walk up and climb the gate.
yeah, I'm not convinced, it's going to work, if I'm honest, with locking and closing every night, because I don't have the ability to do that on a regular basis. And I think it's a lot to put on the councillors to do. I'm not convinced it's the best option, but we are where we are.
Okay. I mean, we'll have to think about what hours we're going to do. I mean, I took some pictures the other day of because East Brent car park with the cemetery, which is the other side, which is on the footpaths on the other side. Their hours are 8 8 in the morning until 6 at night. That they open and close theirs each day.
Sure.
So we will have to decide what our hours are, because obviously anyone needs to know before we start locking people at night
Yes.
what the time is that we're actually going to be doing that.
Obviously a 4 a.m. sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
Amanda.
I think, like Bob said, we're going to have to draw the line somewhere and say these are the hours,
Yeah.
and
What's the first of all? We don't put a gate, and we are at risk of-
we've got to we've got to protect ourselves by having that gate. And I think we go. But the thing is, it's like Bob said, we've got it up and running. Let's see how it works. It might be a thing we just got to go
Well,
on
I
the
got
way a
there
bit.
2 weeks ago.
For sunrise?
Yeah, for sunset. Yeah.
Oh, right.
So, and there was a lot of people in the car park then,
Yeah.
and the sunset was 7:22. So if we lock it at 6, that's a lot of people who...
I think we would, my own feeling would be we're going to be later than 6.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with being later than that.
No, especially before the clocks change. We might have to have winter somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And with a special exception on the 21st of June.
Okay, highways.
No.
Okay,
Hang on, can I just say about highways?
Yes.
You know, I said about the Burrows Green,
yes.
the house with the garden going right up to the, could somebody contact the estate agent and ask them to cut it?
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Just remind me again, whether it's...
So this is Burrows Green, which is on Brent
What was it again?
Street.
I can't remember.
It's not very far up,
60
is it? Yeah.
Something? I can't
Not
remember. I
green,
did
but
say
Yeah,
it.
that's
was.
right.
Is it green slate or green?
Yeah, green
Yes,
slate.
green
it's
slate.
estate
contact
agents.
GTH, basically.
Yeah.
And it's basically where their verge has grown out over the
Mhm.
It's
verge
going
of the
nearly
footpath
to the white line, so you
Yeah.
won't walk
Okay.
in the road
Yeah,
instead of using the pseudo footpath.
okay.
Okay.
I'll follow that with the GTH.
A couple of other things just to report. We had a report of a blocked drain at Church Lane and a leaking, I don't know what you call it, manhole cover, which was causing a problem. Both have been reported, the one that's leaking and also the blocked drain, so that's sitting with Somerset, at least on the drain side. We had a report of the surgery meeting of a drain issue on Burton Row, and again we've reported that to Somerset for them to have a look into. Crooked Lane, you may remember a little while ago we were talking about the fact there was a blocked culvert under the road. That has now been replaced with a bigger culvert, so that hopefully should save anything in the future being a problem down there. So there have been a number of things taking place. Anything else for highways? That takes us to the village
Village
green.
Now, Andy was on the rota for September.
Right.
I haven't heard anything from Andy, so I don't know whether he has got a report, done a report, but I haven't seen anything.
Colin said he was going to do it because Andy was away.
Yeah, I didn't have anything from Colin either, so...
Okay.
Okay, well,
Doesn't help very much.
if we chase them up, just to get something back.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder again for all members, the monthly report is, so if you're down for say September, you give your report at the October meeting. Ideally what we should be looking at is trying to get there about once a week, just to have a look around. It's the picking up only litter that you find and putting it in the bins. It's just keeping a quick eye on the play equipment to make sure there's nothing dangerous, because ideally if there is a claim, we need to be able to say to our insurers that we have kept an eye on stuff. Now the detailed safety inspection is done monthly by GB Sports anyway, so we're not getting into all the detail of the nuts and bolts and are they at the right size. It's just down to, is there wear and tear that you've noticed, is there something wrong with a piece of equipment that we need to take action on, and then it's a question of reporting that back to Owen. Owen lets members have a sheet, because then he can keep a copy of that sheet, and again if there's a claim on the insurance a few months down the line, we can again show that people have actually been looking at it. Jane?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I'm in the shop every Wednesday, so I could do it all the time, you know. I'm not use any of the other councillors. I mean, Simon was there today cutting the grass, and he was there last week cutting the grass, so it's been very busy.
Simon.
Jason.
Joe, Jason.
Oh, sorry, Jason,
Yeah.
sorry.
I thought we got a new contractor.
No, sorry, sorry, ignore me. Yeah, so he was there again today, so cutting.
I mean, if you're game for doing that, at least to start with, I mean, if you're happy to do October,
Yeah,
because we needed to sort out someone to do October anyway.
yeah,
So yeah, if you're happy to do
Yeah,
that,
I
see
think
how you go this time, but don't. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's, I mean, I'm there in the shop and I'm
Well, I mean,
Just
if
go for
if
a
nothing
stroll.
else, it would be another sort of, report, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Another
yes,
person
yeah.
looking at it. Different day, probably.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't stop other members when you're on the green doing a bit anyway. I mean, I know when all of us tend to be on there, if you see something out of place, report it, or as I say, if there's odd bits of litter and stuff, I mean, we all tend to pick it up and just
Yeah.
dispose of it.
Talking of the green, is there any way we can clean the basketball thing?
We've had an offer. David Sturgis is about to be doing some cleaning, I think, of the porter cabin. He mentioned to me that he's doing some jet washing there for some reason anyway.
Okay.
And he said he would have
He
a go
would
at
do
doing
it.
that
Oh,
for us
good.
while he was there, so
Excellent.
that should be coming forward.
Marvellous.
Okay. Staffing and audit group haven't met, so there's no report on there. Buildings working group, just a quick update on our last meeting from last week. The contractor advised us that they are slightly behind schedule at the moment. When they were doing the roofing, the weather was not ideal, so that has put them back, and they reckon they're about 5 days behind at the moment. They are of the opinion that over the next month they can catch that back up, so by next month they're hoping it will be less than that, but that's where they sort of currently feel they are. We've had some discussions at that last meeting with the shop in that the front door, we had a spec for a standard manual door. The shop would like to have an automated door, so that it's easier for people to go through. They have said that they are happy to pay for the extra cost of doing that, and they are also happy to do the ongoing maintenance and servicing of that, so it should have no impact on us whatsoever. So our view was we didn't see there was a problem with that, but unless anyone feels there is. Okay. We were advised by our architect that we need to formally register the address of the new building. So the toilet block had a registered address as the toilet block, but now it's going to be 2 units. We need to register it as 2 units. Owen and myself have been sent some forms from Somerset Council that we need to fill in to do that, and there's unsurprisingly there is a fee to go with that, which is £110. Basically what it then means is Somerset notify the post office, they notify all the statutory undertakers, the sort of electricity, gas, all those sort of people, so that they all have it as a formal, proper registered address. And that also goes to the business rates department, because interestingly enough, both the shop and the toilet block have to be registered for business rates. So that will be done as part of that process, but again, we're just obviously advising yourselves if that's something that we need to go ahead
Does that
and
mean
do.
we're paying double the amount of business rates?
No.
Right.
So they will allocate the rates to the 2 separate
Right,
ones.
okay.
Interestingly enough, probably neither of us will pay anything anyway, because up until now, you are registered for business rates and you get there is a fee, but as a public convenience, the former councils have always given discretionary relief, so they don't charge the business rate. And for the shop, it was the same for Caroline's shop when she was in the village, that because it was the only real shop in the village, they get discretionary rate relief. So again, they're registered, they get notified of the bill, but they shouldn't actually have to pay it, because they should get notified that they've got a discretionary relief.
I normally get documents for every year to say that we're, not so liable for it,
Yeah.
which is very convenient. Sorry about that.
You'll have noticed obviously the roof has been completed, the solar panels are also in place, so that's on they're on the back roof and the roof that's adjacent to the hall, so they've gone into place and will be connected up by the electrician in due course. And the only other thing I think I would need to notify you of is we were, under the planning, we were always going to have a soakaway to take the rainwater off the roof, and that was going to be on the village green. What they're looking at doing is actually going to do 2 soakaways, so there'll be one at the back of the building, but they're also going to do one at the front. So they've checked with building regs. There are rules and regulations as to how far it has to be from the road, how far it has to be from the building, but there is a space that they can do some of that, and they felt it was better to split the water between the two so we don't end up with overdoing it either. So that will be part of the project as it goes forward. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else that came out of us. So that's where we currently are, and obviously on the agenda later we'll get some other stuff to do with the shop as well. Shop working group itself hasn't met. No updates on the policies this month. Somerset Council report, quick couple of things just to keep you advised from Somerset. You may have seen in the press about Somerset potentially merging with Wiltshire and Dorset. It's not the councils coming together like we have done between the districts and the county. Government is talking about devolving powers and finance to regional areas, and at the moment our 3 councils aren't in a region, so we couldn't apply for any of those things. So at the moment all 3 are we've all in effect put our hat in the ring to say we'll put in an expression of interest to see what's on offer, and if what's on offer is worth going through all the hassle of trying to come together as a grouping. We did do it once before where we were looking at potentially going with Devon, and then Devon decided to go with Cornwall and not with us. Nothing may come of it, or it may be a way that facilitates power and finance to come down to the area, in which case Somerset needs all the money it can get down it can, so that's why they're looking into that. Recycling, you may have seen, the recycling centres have now gone over to their winter hours, so that's 9 till 5 Mondays till Fridays and 9 till 4 over the weekend. Quick warning we've been asked to pass out to people is be careful of parking text scams. We've had people getting text messages saying that the council wants you to pay for the parking that you had used. We don't send out text messages that way. There's also been a bit of a scam in some of the car parks where people have stuck QR codes on the side of the machines, which are not a QR code for paying your fee to Somerset. It goes to somebody else's bank account. So do be a little bit careful if you're using that system. It's prone to abuse. Yeah. I would hasten to say just at this point I am not medically trained, but I've been asked to remind people flu and COVID vaccines are coming up, so if you want to take advantage of those, please make contact with people that you need to. And I think that's probably all I'm going to report from Somerset, but if there's any other updates that anyone wants to question. Okay. Which takes us on to the finances, and Owen.
Yeah, it does. There's a fair number of payments this month actually, but first of all the statutory payments, which are our normal sort of monthly ones, which are agreed in April of each year, actually March to be honest. There's no change in any of those. They're all statutory and have been previously agreed. Variable account, variable payments listed. We've obviously got the office expenditure for the period July to September. That's down on previous quarters simply because during half of August and half of September there was no travelling costs involved because all the travelling was there. So that's why that's down. Parish hall room hire account, it says they're between actually, I haven't got dates in between, but I have checked them and they are correct. £91, and then there's a hall booking by Paul Martin on an odd thing that's sort of outstanding from earlier in the year.
Who's Paul Martin?
1750.
He's our architect.
So I usually book the rooms now, but going back earlier in the year, he booked them and they weren't always picked up. So there was one odd one that went astray here. So there's those two. Little John's external auditor, they charge £378 for the privilege of doing our audit, which is in line with the statutory fees, so there's nothing there. There were no queries on our audit, which means we didn't pay any extra costs. They charge £100 for every query they produce on your audit, so it's worth getting them right the first time. Annual inspection fee for GB Sports, that's when they do their annual summer inspection, 114. That's outstanding actually. For some reason they didn't send me an invoice, and they only just sent it for June. You had a locum clerk, Hazel Brinton, came here last month. Her charges were £68.75, including travelling time and so forth. That's all standard, it's all statutory laid down by SLCC, so there was nothing on her invoice that was unusual or strange.
So just to clarify, SLCC is the Society of Local Council Clerks, and the next on the list, the SALC, is the Somerset Association of Local Councils.
Yeah, so one is, I suppose, to differentiate between the two, the SLCC looks after clerks' interests primarily. The SALC tends to look after councils primarily. So one is councils, one is clerks. So that's how it kind of splits. And interestingly, we've got our first loan payment for the first loan we took out in April. This is the October payment, which is 6 months on from when we took out the first loan, 1,462. I'll talk that through you later because there's some information on your sheets there which clear some of the confusion of that up. So yeah, they're all the payments for this month. So I would need two resolutions, one for statutory payments and one for variable payments.
Okay. Is there a proposal that we...
Or any questions?
Yeah.
More importantly.
Not. Is there a proposal that we pay the statutory payments as normal? So Amanda's did the job of them. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous.
Okay.
And then the itemised payments that Owen's just been through in terms of the ones for this month, or is there a proposal that we pay those? Charlotte, thank you. Seconded, Amanda. All those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous as well.
All right, that's fine. Now I've sent gave you some paperwork which I was going to put it on the screen, but I thought it was probably easier to have something in front of you and go through it. But basically, the first, which we'll have a look at in more detail next month when we set the budget, but the October update, and what I tend to do there
So the first sheet, just to confirm, is the one with the A, B, C, D
That's
across
it.
the top.
and it's in three colours, so I do black for the budget, red for actual to date, and then blue for the forecast. So I tend to stick to that fairly consistently so you know what you're looking at, basically. And you'll see on that you'll see the forecast figure. It's self-explanatory, really. But importantly, the bottom line is, if you go to the second page, we have a budget of 59,000 as we started the year, 479. My forecast at the moment is that we'll end up at 54,000. So, and the reason, one of the key reasons why we're saving that amount of money is because we had 11,000 put in the budget for the loan payments for the shop and the build. But in fact, because of the way we staggered our loans, we're not paying the full amount because we started them off in April, we took another tranche in May, another tranche in July, another tranche in September. So we haven't had to pay a full year for the loan payments. So that's the reason why there's about 5,000 difference there between what we budgeted for and what I forecast will end up. That figure of 618814 is an absolute accurate figure. It's not forecast actually, it's exactly where we'll be because I've worked out all the payments, so I know exactly that that's the right figure. Apart from that, most other things within our budget have gone according to plan, really, I would say.
Just one question on the item in the income budget, energy credit shop, what is that?
Well, what happened was we held the account for the electricity as a council, and what the shop did when they started with the porter cabin, they paid us 80% of the electricity account because they were
Right, there's
using
a
the vast
cable
majority of it.
Coming off our building.
Right, okay.
going to the shop, so that's feeding them at the moment. And as Owen said, we have to pay the bill because that's who the contract's with, but they pay us back for what a proportion.
And of course it coincided with, this was going back a couple of years, and it coincided with this huge explosion in energy costs, just at the same time as we were doing it. So the shop really took a tumble on that one because the energy costs really rocketed up. But it's worked quite well. But of course, when we come to the shop, once the building is finished, the shop will take over electricity supply, and for the whole building, and we will repay the shop for the energy that our toilet block uses. So it'll be the other way around, because they're going to be the largest energy users. We thought it was probably the better way around for us to pay them.
Is there a meter in the toilets to see how much electricity?
There's some meter there,
Okay.
apparently, so we'll know what the actual amount is rather than have to sort of guesswork it, hopefully.
So yeah, historically we had the 1 meter in the toilet, which we then did the proportion with the shop in the new setup. The main meter will be for the shop.
Yeah.
There'll be a sub-meter taking, so what goes to the toilet block will be off a sub-meter, so we can actually have a reading as to what we've used, and that's what the shop will then charge us.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, in the other way around, water, we'll have the main meter, and they'll have a sub-meter off that for the water, so we will charge them for the water usage, because again, it was done that way because, as Owen said, with the electric, they're going to use a lot more electric for the shop than we are for the toilet block, but in terms of water, we'll end up using a lot more water than them, because they've only got the 1 toilet and the basin, so...
We'll try to work it out so it works out fairly as far as we can see, you know,
And to be honest, we could have gone down the line of having completely separate supplies, but it was going to add thousands of pounds to the actual cost, because
You have a standing charge.
and also they wanted to, for a connection of another connection for electric, because we're having the 1 connection, we're in effect reusing what we had. If we had an additional, they wanted to put a whole new line in, and it was going to cost several thousands of pounds to do, so this way it minimised that capital cost up front.
Okay.
This document next month we'll be using for the budget for next year, because obviously we need to set a budget and preset for 25-26. So what I'll be doing over the next few weeks is extending that forecast to take into account January, February, March, because there are a lot of costs that I can anticipate pretty accurately. You know, things like our contract fees and a lot of our statutory costs I can work out almost. There's a few things that sometimes waver, but by and large we can get a fairly accurate forecast when we come to set a budget in November for the following year. So next month we'll be setting out tasks to do that. You'll also see on the income budget, PWLB, section 14 and grants, all that is on a separate sheet, because we decided that actually we needed to...
So is that one-headed shop and build budget?
That's it, yeah, that's the one. Shop and build budget. Because this was such a complicated piece of work, really, we decided to keep the shop completely separate because of our loans and because of our different stages of loans, and also our VAT reclaims. Everything else was affected by that. So we've done a separate budget there. And what you'll see is as our receipts and inward payments, our transfers from reserves, and then we've listed our building costs, finance costs, all the way down. So we've done the original budget that we set, what has so far happened up to September, and then where we expect to end up at the end of the financial year. And you'll see, if you look at the bottom line, which I think is the probably the most important figure at the bottom there, you'll see we're about £38.90 in deficit on those figures. So pretty well a balanced budget, actually. We're pretty well on target where we thought we were going to be. So
that's
please ask some questions. Sorry?
That's under budget there, isn't it? Is that right?
It's under, well, yeah, it's slightly under, yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, it won't end up at that figure, I'm sure. There'll be some difference, because there's still quite a lot of differences in some of the build costs and what the shop are paying for, what we're paying for, and there's some reclaims. a VAT that may not be quite perfect, but that's just a first stab at it, to try and get some idea of where we are. And at the moment we are where we thought we wanted to be at this stage, after 6 months of the financial year. I don't anticipate it being very far off that. The biggest problem I could have foreseen was getting the VAT reclaim, because there are some complications of the VAT reclaims on building. But fortunately we took advice back in February, and I've used the advice that we were given to allow us to get the VAT reclaimed, and I've reclaimed now 2 lots already, and I'm just about to do another lot for July. So that's working, and that was my biggest worry, because with a budget of £40,000 of VAT, that could have been quite a nasty one if that hadn't worked. The loans we've drawn down all the loans now, all 4 tranches now have come down, so all the loans are finished now. We've got all the loan money into our reserve account now, and now it's just a question of paying the builder now for the final amounts as and when he sends us an invoice each month. And that's all verified by Paul Martin, our architect. He verifies all of those building costs, so we know what we're paying for is the correct figure. But please do ask any questions that you want to ask on that, because there's a lot of numbers there. Got me confused at times, I'm sorry.
Just in terms, again, just for potential newer members as well, there's a thing there called SIL funds, so that's the Community Infrastructure Levy funds, so that was money that the council receives from, it was previously Sedgemoor, now it's Somerset, for when properties are built, and there is a charge that's made on them by Somerset now. It's based on square meterage. There are various exemptions that people can apply for, so that if you're doing a self-build, you can have those fees waived and you don't have to pay them. But the bulk of that funding came with the 2 developments at either end of Brent Street, and so that's where that money has come from, the SIL funds. The unused PWLB reserve is because, again, last year we thought the whole process was going to move a lot quicker than it did. So we put into the budget 11,500 to meet the interest payments on the loan that we were expecting to take out. We didn't take the loan out at all, so we rolled that money over into the budget to give us the help there. So that's where that money came from. So that's last year's interest, not this year's interest that Owen was talking about just now.
23, 24.
Yeah.
So, and then the other 2 sheets there, as you'll appreciate, because we took the loan in 4 tranches, they were all at different times, which meant that they were at different interest rates as well. This makes life very, very complicated. But the first loan we took, which was April the 7th this year, 39,975. It should be 40,000, we take out £25 admin fee. The due date for that, which is the one I mentioned just now on the payments, the first payment there, 1,462. And I've broken it down, now maybe I didn't need to do that, but I've broken it down to interest payments and capital payments. So what you'll see there is that 1074 is the interest on that payment, and 388 is the capital payment. So the total payment for this period, 1,462. So this year, we'll only have the one payment for loan 1. Now loan 2 came out May the 7th, and rather curiously, you see an odd figure there of £5.96. That's just purely an administrative thing with PWLB, because they took the loan, that was just for a couple of days. That's why it's a bit of an odd figure. It was only for a couple of days that they calculated it. But for some reason they calculated the capital as quite a large figure. Now that to me looked as if that was on our side, so I didn't query it, because I thought if we paid all that amount of capital but only that amount of interest, that looks good to me. So I never queried it, I never fully understood where that figure came from. But so that's due on the 15th of the 11th, and next month, 1456.43 is the first payment for loan 2. Loan 3, which we took out on July the 4th, which is at the highest interest rate we've paid so far, 5.45. The due date on that one is 6 months later, which is the 13th of January 2025, and comes out at 1,474. And the first payment on loan 4 comes out at 1,415, which is due on the 20th of March 2025. So all of those are in this year's financial budget, which is where I write the 6188 figure that you saw on the budget. So our total figure for this year's payment is 6188.14. That's our total payments for the loans for this year, this financial year. But you can see from that, it looks quite complicated at times, trying to work out the difference with the interest rates and the timing. I am hoping to try and get them to consolidate it into one loan. I've asked the question as to whether they can consolidate it, make life easier. Whether they will or not, I don't know, because they're unfortunately all different interest rates, that's the problem. So they may not be able to do it. And then the second sheet, which is much easier, is the 2025-26, which is next financial year, where you can see we've got 2 payments for each of the loans through the year, and that comes out at 11,619 for a full year, and it remains that figure for the next 10 years at least. Well, it remains for the whole period because it's a fixed rate loan, so it will never change. So every single year the Parish Council will be looking at 11,619, made up of 8,366 interest and 3,253 capital.
What a shame interest rates haven't gone down first.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
I mean, interesting enough, if you're looking at that 11.6, you'll see that this year we budgeted for 11.203, what was based on the interest rate at that time. The year before it was 11.6 something. So it's in the ballpark of where we thought it was going to be. It would have been nice if it had gone the other way. But I mean, interestingly enough, since we took that last one, it's gone up another 0.2% on what the interest rate would be if we took it today. So
very much like a draw, really.
It is.
Timing. But I think we were definitely right to take it out over 4 tranches, because that meant that we could spread our payments equally, and also it gave us this year, because if we'd just taken it on April the 1st, we'd have had a big lump to pay in this financial year, so we'd have lost £5,000 probably. We'd done it on April the 1st, April the 7th. So we did save something by doing it that way. So any queries, questions?
Just term. What is the term for the
25 years. Yeah, 25 years. And as I say, it's a fixed rate, so it remains the same amount through the whole period.
for the whole 25?
I guess over that time the proportion of capital to interest on
Yeah.
the mortgage will change.
That is right. I mean, if you look at I've got a sheet which I can send you if you're very keen to see it, but it shows very clearly how the differential changes from capital to interest over the 10 years. I'm sure it's not exactly exciting reading, but you never know, you might just be interested in it. So that's it really on finance, I think. And then just to think about the budget for next month. Next month we'll do the annual budget for next year. Just give it a bit of thought, really. Think there's anything you feel we need to consider as a council that you'd like to think about for the budget the following year.
As Owen said, that will be brought to the next meeting for us to have a look through. I think we normally it's the December meeting that we actually make the
Make a
decision.
decision, yeah.
So we'll
So
go.
next meeting you propose ideas and then make the decision. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just give you the information that we've got to date and what I forecast, and then it's up to you then where you put the numbers.
And in effect, it'll be Owen's fun time next time to explain to us how the precept bit works, but basically it's a balance between sort of what we end up spent this year, because if we underspend this year, then in effect we've got some money left in the budget. So you could end up precepting less because you need less money from
Sure.
households.
Yeah.
Whereas if we've overspent this year, then to meet the same level of expenditure, you've got to make up that shortfall from this year as well. So it bubbles through on we've got a bit of a spreadsheet which helps us work it out, but it's not dull. If you like figures, it's not dull.
A lot of parish councils get confused between the budget and the precept,
Yeah.
and they're not the same thing at all. My own council in North Curry only ever talk about a precept. So I always say to them, "Where's your budget?" "Well, that's the precept." I said, "No, it isn't, because you've got reserves. You know, what are you going to do about your reserves? How are you going to set your reserves?" So there is a confusion there still within the county about how to set budgets and precepts separately. Yeah. So that's basically a bit of fun for November.
Okay.
You like that sort of thing?
Well, I think we've got 2 members now, new members, who are interested in that sort of thing as well, so that's good. Busman's holiday. Okay, that takes us to the end of the finance bit, so it moves on to master consideration, shop and toilet block. So we talked about the payments I think you have mentioned the payments to the contractor, yes, and the VAT reclaims, how that's being dealt with. The building update we've given as to what happened at the last one, which takes us on to the lease and legal agreement. Now, Owen circulated to everybody the draft lease that we had. Are there any questions or comments that members have on that?
Just one on the interest. I think the wording was quite vague. They just said the interest is 4% over.
That West Bank rate, wasn't it? Yeah.
Or didn't even say that. I think it's a bank interest.
Right.
So usually it's Bank of England base rate, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's just
Okay, we can double
it's in the
check.
contract, I think. I would see.
Yeah.
It's just a definition, really, that
Yeah.
tightens it all up so everyone knows what we're looking at, because different banks have different interest rates at different times.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, we will double check that. There was there's a couple of things that we picked up as well, which was just in one part it referred to payments of the rent being quarterly, and another one it referred to them as being half yearly. So we were just going to make sure the 2 of those were the same and go with the quarterly, which makes it easier, bite-sized chunks.
yeah.
I think both the shop and ourselves will both find it quarterly easier, I think.
Yeah, I think. Well, because it's. I think, yeah. Because I think the rental says it's payment, isn't it? It's in each time is in advance. So if we're asking them in advance for 6 months, that's quite a big chunk of money to have to find. So.
Yeah.
But what if members are generally happy? What we were going to ask was if you are prepared to sort of in effect authorise myself and Owen to sign the lease. I've been advised, and I'll stand to be corrected from the back if I'm wrong, but I've been advised that the shop are happy with the draft lease as is. So if members are also happy, then if we can have authorisation that we can sign it on behalf of the council, what we will then do is go back to both sets of solicitors, make sure we get a proper hard copy printed off by them, and then get that back so that both sets of parties, the shop and ourselves, can sign. But we just, as I say, we need authorisation that we can do that on behalf of the council. Amanda?
I propose that we authorise you to
Okay,
do
and
that.
we will question the interest just to make sure that's covered.
Sure.
Second.
Okay, all those in favour, please show. That's
I
unanimous.
was wondering, I don't know whether you agree with it, but we've got to have a provisional meeting on the middle Wednesday
For the planning.
for a planning issue. So I just wonder whether perhaps that would be a nice opportunity to get signatures from the shop and the council at the same meeting. So it's a public arena. Everybody sees us signing it. I thought that'd be quite a good idea if you're happy with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Any other matters not covered above? Is there anything else that we need to raise on that front?
No.
Okay. In which case, it feels a bit like a bit deflating then. When you think how long we've taken to get to this point, and it's, we finally able to sign
that
it.
lease, and
Absolutely.
then we'll let the fireworks off.
Exactly. No, it's fabulous.
Yes.
Okay, that moves us on to the next item on the agenda, which is play area, quotes and grants and safety matters. So there's been some advance since where we were last time. So basically, just to give you an update, we've now had 3 sets of quotes in for carrying out the works for the zip wire, redoing the safer surface under the roundabout, moving the seesaw to the other side of the green and resurfacing underneath that. The 3 quotes that we've had have come in from the 3 companies are a company called Creative Play, who were the ones who actually were the cheapest a year ago when we had this. They've come in at 20,364 plus VAT, but we can get the VAT back. GB Sports have come in at 20,553, and Wicksteed have come in at 24,283. On top of that, there is about £1,000 worth of refurb work to do to the roundabout for the base work where the rotting wood, some of it's gone through. So on the funding side, we have the money in the play reserve currently is 7,500, and in all likelihood we will be putting another 2,500 in next year. So we could use that and then put it back in after the year. We have a grant that came in from the Nuttall Trust for £1,750. We had a grant from Tony Hill for £1,000 for play equipment. We have had notification come. I've been advised that we are about to receive another tranche of SIL money for properties that are currently being built in the parish, and that's going to come in excess of £6,000. And we've got about £124 so far that's come in through the GoFundMe, which gets us to a total. And there is one other grant, which last year Owen managed to apply, or it may have been 18 months ago, applied for a grant from a charitable trust, which initially was offering us somewhere in excess of £3,000 if it was for a piece of play equipment for disabled use. But they said to us if we went for something that wasn't, they were offering at that stage, I think it was 2.5. So we've got to go back and confirm that with them. But if that's the case, that brings us to a total of 21,374, which is basically where we need to be. What we do not have to necessarily take the cheapest quote, which, as I say, is Creative Play. There's £200 between them and GB Sports. Potentially, there might be an advantage going with GB Sports because they're our people who do the inspection, and they're the ones who make sure it all meets the safety standard.
Holds them accountable.
Yes, exactly.
But it's up to members as to how you feel we progress or what.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would propose that we go with GB Sports with their quote.
Well, before we move on to that, with Creative, have you got any other experience with them? I know they get, so they're unknown anyway.
We haven't worked with them.
Yeah.
I mean, they seem to be a bona fide decent company.
I did a lot of emails from them, so yeah, I don't know much about them.
I think, like you pointed out, though, because that will hold, if GB Sports do it, that will hold them accountable.
Well, yeah.
And we know that they're...
Yeah, well, if they put a zip wire and then 18 months later there's something wrong with it, well, you need to go back and fix it.
Because we're all using it, and it's
It's okay, don't bring it told.
20 stone.
The problem is,
It's in the adult's office.
some of us are too tall that our bodies will touch them.
We need 2 then, one for adults.
Is there a different spec between the 3? Because obviously there's a
So we asked them to match each other.
Okay,
so we did go through it with them, but also to get them to be the same.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we do need to confirm the other charitable trust money because that helps fill that last gap. But they, I think, are meeting.
I'm pretty
next month or
pretty
so.
confident we'll be okay with that one.
The SIL money we should be receiving this autumn, so that will be in our account shortly. And obviously, were we to press the button, it's going to take a while for them just to gear up and get ready to do the works anyway.
And I have heard not parish councillors, but parish members are interested in fundraising as well. So,
Yes.
so that will help.
I guess
Yeah.
it gives us a bit more time to get some money on GoFundMe,
Yeah.
so we can start pushing that through.
Well, and again, if that comes in, that just means we can use less of the SIL money, which we can then use for something else. So,
Okay.
Malcolm.
Should we wait until SIL and the other charities' money is in the coffers?
I think certainly what I would, if members were happy that we passed a resolution to do it subject to us getting those funds, I think that would be fine. But then at least we know what we're doing, and we just then need to get those. But yes, I wouldn't want to go ahead if we haven't had that money come in, because otherwise we're leaving ourselves a bit potentially short.
That's right,
yes.
All right, well, if I amend the proposal
Yeah.
to say I propose we give the GB Sports quote subject to confirmation of those other funds.
Okay. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Hill Lane car park gate we mentioned last time. The quotes, obviously, that was from last meeting. So yes, we will. We'll get those. They are being installed in the short term, as I say. Amanda and myself will deal with it, but we do need to, I think, get some signage made, which obviously has information on. So we may just need to be a little careful in terms of closing at this stage, but at least if they're physically there, we
And I'm happy to volunteer, so if you two can't do it,
okay.
then let me know. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my difficult days, but the rest
You
of
can
it
do the sunrise shift.
in the winter, no problem.
Okay. And obviously, I mean, it's something we just need to be aware of. If we get volunteers come forward that they know what the hours are that we're expecting to be done, they need to know also how they deal with, because it's been brought up by members, what happens if you end up with a belligerent member of the public who's in the car park and won't leave. So I mean, we're not looking at, we just need to come up with protocols of how we deal with that, so that no one gets into trouble. The general condition of the public rights of way, that follows on from last time. As I say, we put the notice in the Brent Knoll News. I've been advised that at least one landowner has done some work on their path, so it's had a desired effect there, and we have had at least one volunteer come forward who'd like to join a working party if we get on to doing one. So fingers crossed we can move that forward as well. Samaritan Bridge signage, where
Well,
are we with?
basically, you know, this started off with, won't mind me saying, Matthew Boquet first raised it with me because somebody in the village, unfortunately, used the bridge. Now, obviously, Samaritans do get involved in these things, of course, but the important thing is I got hold of Network Rail and they agreed to allow us to put signage up there. And as far as I know, we've got Samaritan signage templates lined up, but I will need to check that. If you're happy for me to go ahead and deal with that with Matthew, we'll get that sorted out.
So Network Rail, in effect, or whatever they are now, have they said in effect we can attach that to their equipment, their bridge?
Yeah, they came back and said, was it both sides who wanted it? And I went back and said, yes, it was.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't actually quite sure, but I imagined it would be.
Yeah.
So, hopefully we can get that signage up.
So is it the bridge or is it the actual crossing?
That bridge.
Okay.
That's what I was just going to say. I think we need it on the crossing as
crossing.
well.
Right.
Just
So
because
maybe we should do both.
Yes.
where the footpath crosses the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll sort of liaise with Matthew on that, and we'll see what we can get going on this.
So members are happy that we authorise Owen just to get on and do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have a cost for it?
Well, Samaritan, because I was involved with Samaritan for many years, and they do have a budget available for this kind of signage. You know, because bearing in mind they're a charity, one wouldn't want to take too much from charity, so it may well be that we look for some limited funding for it, rather than expecting them to pay for it. So I'll find out what the costs are involved.
I think I spoke to Matt about this because I see him quite often, and